Hello, friends, and welcome to your Daily Detroit for Wednesday, June 22nd, 2022. So many twos today. I'm Jer Stays. Today, we're talking to Brad Williams from the Detroit Regional Chamber. We're going to cover a number of policy and community issues facing Metro Detroit this year, the progress made, and where work still needs to be done. Recorded at the Mackinac Policy Conference, this episode is brought to you by our supporter, Jerry Mangona. He's a gentleman and a scholar, and you can join him at patreon.com/dailydetroit, and thank you. Joining me at the table at the Grand Hotel, Brad Williams, Vice President, Government Relations, Detroit Regional Chamber.
That is correct. I mean, I've been saying Brad from the Chamber every time I flash my name badge around here, but yes, that is my correct title.
Because there's no other Brads.
Yeah, I don't, not at the Chamber, certainly. But this is the one time that I can just say from the Chamber, too. I don't have to, say from the Detroit Regional Chamber because, there's all the other chambers. But we're pretty much the only chamber in town right now. So it's
in fact, we're the only chamber in town in another town.
Right, exactly.
It's like a nesting doll.
Yes, exactly. So it works out pretty well.
I felt I had my responsibility to use the official title
Yes,
once.
I appreciate it.
So every year, the focuses kind of change a little bit. But I think it kind of evolves over time in like really smart ways. And especially with how everything's been going with politics, with the world. I mean, where are you finding things are at for the chamber and kind of your goals for the conference this year?
So the thing that I think is very interesting this year, and I've been saying this over and over since I hit the island on Sunday afternoon, we were just here in September. And so in a lot of ways, it feels like we never left, but it feels like it's been so long because the world has just kind of turned over so many times since September.
So many issues, whether it's, so many issues are here that weren't there in September.
And that is the overriding theme of this conference is the business community's role in our changing world and when and how should the business community weigh in on public policy issues. We're being asked as employers by our employees, our customers, our investors, to get involved in, a whole host of issues that you wouldn't expect businesses to be involved in that aren't typical Chamber of Commerce or business issues. And so that's driving a lot of the conversation up here this week. And then, of course, we just got done with Secretary Buttigieg. And, of course, when you have the Secretary of Transportation here and you're the Detroit Regional Chamber, you're going to talk a lot about the future of transportation and automation and electrification. So I think those are the two big themes that we've already heard a lot about and we're going to continue to hear a lot about.
What are some of the roles that you see, not just for the chamber, but like all the stakeholders? Like, how do we hold on to and gain? To me, it's not good enough just to hold on to an industry. I feel like it's better to gain and grow and maybe even create spin-offs from that. Yeah. I think there are people out there who look at, more investments happening in California with automotives and in other places. What do we need to do here?
So there's a couple things, and that's a really great question. One of the big wins we had since the last time we talked in September when you were here was passing the big economic development package that the chamber was really involved in December that allowed us to get the big win for GM to get the battery plants both in Delta Township and Orion Township. Because with the future electrified industry, manufacturing is going to happen where the batteries are built, because the battery is going to be the heaviest part of the car. And so getting those battery plants in Delta Township and Orion was huge in passing that legislation. So from a manufacturing perspective, continuing to really capture those opportunities and build on the economic development policy we passed in December is going to be critical. But the other part of this industry is it's not just a manufacturing industry. We know this is a brain power industry. It is the most exciting industry in the world. And you mentioned, there's a lot of things that are happening in California, but a lot of that exciting research and development is happening here in Michigan. And we need to continue to encourage it to happen here in Michigan. So there's a lot of strategies that need to go into that. Part of it is coaxing that research and development through tax credits and other incentives, but it's also about brain power, right? We've got a great university system that's kicking out really talented engineers and STEM graduates every year. We need to work harder to make sure they're staying here and going into this industry. We need to be pushing more kids who are, in the first robotics teams. We need to start tracking them better and encouraging them to get into STEM fields so that, all of this research and development that we've kind of taken for granted for the last century because we've been home of the automotive industry, this can go anywhere right now. So we really need to double down on this. I feel like a broken record. I feel like I've been saying this for 15 years at this conference, but research, STEM and engineering and getting kids into those fields is really going to be critical to our economic future.
What about the quality of life pieces? Because one of the things that I heard in a housing panel yesterday was that the idea that, people follow jobs isn't as much anymore, especially with the pandemic and everything else. We learned more and more that, the jobs follow people. So what can be done for that side, on the quality of life side and the infrastructure side and all that kind of stuff?
I mean, it's absolutely critical. And, right now, I've been working in public policy for 22 years, and this is the first time where it's ever been like, there's no idea that you can't afford. And so that, we're kind of in a great period right now. So we do need to look at those quality of life questions. And after we passed the economic development package in December, we did talk to a lot of the legislators who were saying we also need to focus on these talent and quality of life questions. And the commitment was, yes, that's also step 2, right? And so as the legislature is going through the appropriations process, both for the next fiscal year, but also spending some of these ARP dollars in supplementals, one-time dollars, that is a big part of what we are talking to legislators about, is how are we making investments into our communities that are going to make them more attractive? And, how are we going to make it easier for our employees to rejoin the workforce, whether that's with, investing in daycare? So those quality of life questions absolutely play into this as well. We released a poll. One thing I thought that was fascinating, I mean, it was dense, and your listeners should go to our website and look all of it. But one of the things I thought was fascinating is that workers ages 18 to 29 in the last 2 years during the Great Recession, 50% of them have changed jobs, right? And so I think when a lot of folks our age and younger came into the workforce, they were just desperate to get a job. But now young workers have so many opportunities. There's so many jobs available, and they can do them from anywhere, that these quality of life questions really are central.
Well, and you've got the cultural changes too. Like, when I talk to listeners, their values about what they want out of a job have changed, even from when I started in my career a little over 20 years ago to someone who started 5 years ago or whatever. There's just certain things they're just not going to tolerate anymore. Especially if they're in an in-demand place, or if they were working in places like restaurants or something like that, they move to another service kind of industry. And it's fascinating to see what that is and what that could portend for the future.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting, I was just, before I came over here, listening to Secretary Buttigieg, and he was talking with about the shortage of drivers right now. Critical. We have 30,000 drivers, I think he said, who retire each year, commercial drivers. And one of the things he said, solutions to that is treating drivers better. And these are things that, I wouldn't even think about. But, drivers, commercial drivers are paid by the trip, right? No one's paying a driver if they are stuck at a port or at the Ambassador Bridge. If their wheels aren't moving, they're not getting paid. And so, those are the types of things that I think we can think of as leaders in a policy field that can drive better outcomes in our workforce participation rate as well.
There was a time when drivers like that were employees. Like I looked into that with another story. There was a time where it was like, hey, this person, they just worked for the company and they just made a wage or they made a salary. And it was something where it's kind of like you even saw movies about truckers and stuff like that. Versus now where it's like you've got everybody hyper freelancing. I wonder if we really need to look at that and say, is that really the best idea in every industry? I know a lot of businesses want to push that cost off, but I don't know if you want somebody to be there all the time, you need to pay them what they're worth and benefits and things like that. Like I feel like, this is my own personal opinion, it's an inequitable conversation when you say, well, I want you to be there all the time, but I don't want to pay you to be there all the time.
Yeah, employers are really learning, and we hear this from our members all the time, they're learning the value of good talent. I just even heard reference yesterday that, we may see a ballot proposal for a $15 minimum wage this year in November. And the crack was made like, okay, fine. Well, you can make $20 at Taco Bell. Is this policy we really need to even discuss anymore? Because I do think employers, particularly coming out of this pandemic, have recognized just what you mentioned before, that employees have different expectations, and they're making definite demands of their employers as well, and it is a blessing and a curse for employers.
What are some of the opportunities that you see for the business community, for politicians, everyone to work together and create new things? And maybe it's tied to automotive and such like that. But when I think about like the growth of the area, I'm thinking about like the growth of mortgages. That's a huge thing now, the mortgage industry. Like I look at it and say, where are the ways that we can grow? What are some things that you're seeing?
Yeah, so one of the things we've been focusing on increasingly over the last couple of years is the cluster of defense, the defense cluster we have up in Macomb County. And I think it's an underappreciated asset that we have in our region. Especially if you're not from Macomb, I don't think quite the economic impact.
Mark Hackel would be very happy if I said, make Macomb your home.
Right? Yeah, you could, but he's got a new billboard. I don't know if you saw his new billboard up.
I
is
TikToked
not.
it.
Yeah, okay.
I TikToked.
Okay. It's not I think he'd still be happy if we said make Macomb your home, but it's a different billboard this year. But that is an opportunity for an industry that is already present in the region and to continue to grow, that most people in our region aren't even really aware exists. That's something that we're looking at from a chamber perspective. I think healthcare also, one of the offshoots of our long-term legacy as a manufacturing and union-heavy region is that we have excellent healthcare plans, right? Everybody's got a Blue Cross card or some other competing card. We've got a lot of people who have very good health insurance, and that means we have very good healthcare systems. But the one thing we don't have, unlike, someplace like Cleveland or Minneapolis, is we don't have one dominant provider, so we're not recognized for, having the Cleveland Clinic or the Mayo Clinic. But when you combine all of our assets together, particularly when you include U of M as part of our healthcare cluster, that's also a real driver of our economy. But because it's not one central system, that is a more difficult industry to coordinate as well, and that's a role that the chamber can play too.
So something that my audience would be remiss, and what's coming. The question I always have to ask, because I know my audience. We've got the SMART millage coming up, renewal. Is that something you all support? And what are you kind of thinking about on the transit side right now?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We have such a critical shortage of transit options, whether you live in the suburbs or the city. I've got so many bruises from the transit battles in the Detroit region. But yeah, SMART is a key component to the imperfect system that we have right now. If I could wave my magic wand, we'd get the regional leaders together and we would have a great RTA proposal that would give us the best regional system we could possibly have. But as good a lobbyist as I am, I'm not quite that good yet. So let's get SMART going, and let's have the best SMART system we can have, and let's have the best DDOT system we can have. And in the meantime, let's take advantage of some of the federal resources that are available and build out the popular regional systems or regional lines that SMART already has. I think the fast routes have proven to be incredibly popular.
Huge success.
And when we look at the RTA plan we were promoting back in 2016, they had bus rapid transit on a lot of those fast routes. And so if we can tap into some of those federal resources and turn those fast routes into even more frequent, more fast routes, and they start to look like BRT, then I think we've got another opportunity to go back to voters on a region-wide basis and talk to them about these fast routes that they already like, make them better, and connecting them across communities. I think that might be the long-term strategy or the medium-term strategy to get a more connected regional system. But without buy-in from our political leaders regionally, I think we're still pushing the ball uphill.
One of the things that strikes me about that is the idea that, in other counties, in other regions I've seen, because I've been studying this issue, is that they go county by county, but the county itself is very dense until you get to the edge of the county. Like the way we're set up, our density strikes across 3 counties and makes it kind of difficult to like I understand the argument from somebody who's out in White Lake going, well, this idea is not going to reach me. Like I don't always agree with it, but I get where they're coming from. So I almost wonder if our geography works against us in that regard.
Yeah, in some respects it might. I think what we need to do is work with our county leaders, whether it's Dave Coulter in Oakland County and Mark Hackle in Macomb County and Warren Evans in Wayne County, to craft a plan that is flexible and respects the needs of people in our further reaching suburbs, right? And the way that this region developed, certainly we don't have the density. Even within the city, we have less density. I got to imagine we have probably more single-family homes in the city of Detroit.
I ran the numbers, and you look at it, and you've got more population density in Ferndale than you do in many parts of the city of Detroit.
Yeah. So we have to work with our county leaders to make sure that in those further parts of our region, we're creating systems that meets the needs of those residents, whether it's dial-a-ride for the senior citizens.
There's flex.
Right. Those types of things. There are solutions out there. And if you talk to Dave Coulter and Dave Woodward out in Oakland County, they're already thinking about these things, and there are options on the table. It's getting everyone together and agreeing on it. And that's, again, I feel like I sound like a broken record. That's been a 50-year history in this region, getting everyone together and agreeing on the solution, right?
Well, Brad, I'm very sorry to reopen that old wound. I do it with love.
I appreciate it. I accept it with love.
Brad Williams, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you sharing the good word of everything, the great conversations that are happening up here with people back home. We're sad we can't accept all 5 million people back home up here on this island, but I think we're running the risk of sinking it anyways. So I'm glad you can share the stories back home, and everyone can be part of the conference.
Couple things before you go. If you've got feedback, dailydetroit@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. Tomorrow we're talking about developments and projects happening around town. Definitely cannot wait for that. With that, I'm Jerry Stays. Thank you so much for listening. Remember that you are somebody, and I'll see you around Detroit.